Welcome back. I'm Brandon, the HBAR Bull, once again joined by Zepsi. We both do some contract work for the HBAR Foundation, but we don't do these weekly updates in any official capacity. We're just coming to you personally to give you the latest in the Hedera ecosystem. Welcome back, Zep.
How's it going, Brandon?
It's going good. Right now, our transaction throughput is on pace to have over 1 billion transactions per week. So fantastic to see. We have a lot of great news to get into, but as always, none of this is financial advice. Use it for entertainment or educational purposes only. So before we really dive into it, Zep, where are you calling from and what have you been doing this week?
Yeah, I've made it to the States, and I found myself in a small cube at the bottom of the place I'm staying in. So I'm in a sort of complex in New York, and around me there's a lot of different tech people, but they're notoriously loud when they're taking meetings. So I've taken myself off into a soundproof room for this one. But I am in the States. If any H barbarians in New York, please hit me up. That'd be great.
There you go. Very cool. And of course, I was busy this past week as well with Hella Future Live. There were all kinds of great teams, and I'm going to miss plenty of them. But, Drop was there. We had Milan from Geotap. Milan is also, of course, with Earthlings, and he was there representing Earthlings, as well as Joe with Earthlings. We had Dorskin and Davenport, Brandon D. Siki was there doing an amazing job with all the music and so many others. And, of course, huge shout out to Elizabeth. She was the driving force behind this, and it was the largest meetup in Hedera history, particularly driven by the community. And it was just a great event. I mean, some of the highlights from me was Manson Lehman talking on Saturday night. The weather was beautiful. It was pretty picturesque at the time, and they just gave a great speech. Both of them, the conversation they had with Elizabeth was just not one to miss. And I think Siki's going to be putting that out before too long. Also, Neuron, they are in pole position, not just in aviation where they're focusing first, but Internet of Things. They're going to be getting into ride sharing. Aviation is just where they're starting, and they're going to make their mark. It seems like they're making a lot of progress with the regulators over there in the UK. That's going to be fun to see. Representing Twidgedal over there is always fun. It's an interactive app, and we're going to be launching before too long. So that was fun. You might have seen Max do a quick stream or whatever with me going through the Twidgedal process, so that was certainly fun. I also did a panel with community members on the last day, the last panel of the last day. We had Solomon from Genfinity up there. We had Sonia from Orbis, and then Brandon D and Patches as well. Just a great conversation again, and interacting with the crowd there, talking to the people that have been with us from the very beginning, taking their questions. Just a fun event all around, and I hope that we can continue those in-person events. I guess the last thing that I wanted to touch on is one of our apps that you're really involved with, Zep, and that is Galaxy. Max again put out a couple tweets that showed my reaction and Solomon's reaction to what they have that's going to be coming out. And of course, we don't want to spoil the surprise, but it's going to be great for our creators, our businesses, everything in the space. Galaxy is really on the front foot and innovating in a way that you can't see larger entities like X do. So that's really good to see. We're going to shift gears here a little bit. So great event all around at Hello Future Live, but we're going to shift gears here a little bit because we're still getting big news on the enterprise front. And I sat down with Rob Allen, of course, for Shark Bites. Because he had limited time, he's really busy over there with the Hashgraph Association. We didn't do any community questions this week, but we covered Flutterwave. Flutterwave is going to really make their mark in Africa. They're a pretty impressive organization all around, but they've landed on using Hedera. So listen to what Rob had to say about that. Welcome back, Rob. What are you up to this week?
Hey, Brandon. I'm in sunny Zurich with the team at the Hashgraph Association, as you can see. Amazing autumnal weather here. The mountains are beautiful. It's just exquisite. So yeah, we're having a great time. I'm doing lots of good Hedera work.
Well, enjoy it over there. We don't have too much time this week, so we'll cover community questions next week. But there is one topic that I wanted to cover. Can you tell us about the Flutterwave collaboration that was just announced last week?
Yeah, of course. This is a really big deal. I seem to say that quite a lot, but actually it's quite a big deal. So Flutterwave may not be on everyone's radar, but it's actually the largest payments infrastructure provider in Africa. It does about $25 billion of total payment volume, 200 million transactions a year. It provides payment services to merchants, big and small, local to Africa and international. So the likes of Netflix and Meta and Uber, TikTok, over 700 employees globally across 12 different countries. So it's a big business. We, as the Hedera ecosystem, have been kind of talking to them for some time. It was originated out of the foundation with Pete Mensah, who leads on many of the payments initiatives and originated this maybe a year ago. And then it got transferred into the Hashgraph Association for the Enterprise Program because it truly is a super scaled enterprise project, and that's what we do at the Hashgraph Association. So I picked it up about 6 months ago. The team and I have been working closely with Flutterwave to shape the use case, and now we're underway. And they made this big announcement at the African conference last week, 2 weeks ago. So it's all kind of in the public domain now. The size and scale shouldn't be underestimated. It's they cover 32 countries in Africa as a one-stop shop for all the merchants, as I said, big and small. They cover all channels, so online channels, mobile, point of sale in shops, in real life, and a variety of others. And currently offer payment types, all the familiar ones like MasterCard and Visa and Maestro and some of the more local payment mechanisms as well. So they're pretty. It's a really, really significant play, and there's a big opportunity that they see in this space, in particular to that continent and their business. Africa's got a growing population. It's anticipated that it'll have 2.5 billion people by 2050, so a quarter of the world's population. They've got a growing middle class, rising wealth, economic growth is growing. There's an anticipation that over that period of time, a lot of the world's manufacturing base will be moving to Africa as well. So it's a huge opportunity. And there's also large remittance flows. So money flows into Africa from diaspora and from business. And two of the world's top 10 remittance recipients are in Africa, and that's Egypt and Nigeria. So there's a huge role for Flutterwave to play in this. And in order to scale, in order to keep up with these technological movements, the Web3 movement, and Africa typically and historically has always kind of leapfrogged the incumbent technology. So we think that Web3 is going to be one of those cases where a lot of the Web 2 kind of constraints on payments, maybe Apple Wallet and the other OEM providers, other Web 2 and 2.5 ways of receiving payments, so payouts or collecting payments in the payments infrastructure, could be achieved through Web 3, and that means stablecoins. So there's a solution that we've envisaged and we're working with Flutterwave on to initially facilitate the collection and payout of funds via USDC, so a stablecoin issued on Hedera with wallets supporting Hedera as part of the technology infrastructure of Flutterwave. What that looks like is initially where a user deposits USDC into their wallet that is hosted by Flutterwave. In fact, they've got a Flutterwave for Business product, which we'll be using. And that wallet will hold these USDC stablecoins and then transmitted either for remittance or purchase. And then Flutterwave will handle the local currency payout, so into the currency of the destination country in Africa. The next phase will include collections as well. So the rather than just kind of a remittance use case, it'll be a merchant payments use case with collections and payout too. So it's super exciting. It's going to be a journey. This is, as you can imagine, quite a complicated thing to effect. But it's one that we and our partners are absolutely up for, and Flutterwave is the perfect partner to demonstrate this technology.
So, Rob, you've covered the size of this opportunity. That's pretty clear. But just to put a finer point on it, why is Flutterwave important for the Hedera ecosystem?
It's scale. It demonstrates that we love the use cases. We love the small use cases and the very pointy, closed perspective use cases that we see developing across the entire landscape that we talk about every week. But what I really love is the ability to demonstrate at not even a national scale, at a continental scale, that distributed ledger technology that scales without compromising on security and is sustainable is the perfect platform to address some of these real world problems. And so, we get a lot of knowledge, and we're able to credentialize these statements that we make all the time. But also, we're making a difference, right? With the real need for low cost, highly efficient remittance has been known for many years. This actually demonstrates how the use of a stablecoin as a primitive with an existing payments infrastructure and Web3 componentry can solve for that problem. Hedera and the Hedera community get to be able to point to something which is actually making a difference on a continental scale. Plus, of course, we get a use case that uses USDC. It doesn't have to be USDC, it can be any stablecoin, but we're putting the infrastructure in place to accommodate that. And that drives liquidity in Hedera. It drives throughput, it drives scale and transactions per second, which creates network revenue.
Now, there's been other platforms that have focused on Africa, but we're making real strides there. This is just exciting to see. Rob, can you kind of give us an idea of when we could expect to see this actually impact the network?
We don't know. Typically, our enterprise projects don't run too long. We run fast and furious. So I imagine this is going to be certainly within a year. So as I often say, the technology part is the easiest aspect of delivering these projects. Flutterwave will be aligning this new technology with their business strategy, with their rollout. And once it's fully tested, I anticipate this happening reasonably quickly because they fully intend to follow through.
Absolutely. All right, so as always, drop those questions down in the comments for Rob for next week. Rob, thank you so much for coming on and explaining Flutterwave, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, Brandon. Take care. Bye.
All right, so like Rob said, I don't think that the impact of something like Flutterwave can be overstated. But one of the things that strikes me here is Hedera is making inroads in things like remittances, which of course there's platforms that focus completely on things like that, cross-border payments like XRP. And I know that Cardano was focused on Africa. I'm not sure, and it's nothing against Cardano, but how have they been doing in general? Because I know you used to follow Cardano a lot. How have they been doing in Africa lately?
Yeah, I mean, there's been a bit of a pivot in their sort of marketing language during the first bull run of, what was it, towards 2020, 2021 kind of time, that they really, really picked up pace. They got into that via this sort of banking the bankless narrative. There's this idea that Cardano was going to go to Africa, give everyone that had an iPhone a wallet, give them traditional financial services from the comfort of their phone without having to have a real, bank or banking infrastructure that, would allow them in, essentially. As we've gone along, we've seen other ledgers come onto the market. We've seen the likes of Hedera, we've seen the Polygon Layer 2 scaling solution, we've seen the likes of Algorand, Avalanche, so on and so forth. Basically, take what Cardano said it was doing, this new scalable infrastructure, going to these, poorer countries which are less developed and helping them with financial infrastructure, and sort of taking that piece of the pie from them. And I don't think, I don't know exactly what's going on in the Cardano ecosystem. I know they've got DeFi, and I know they've got a few other things. Their NFT ecosystem is quite good. But I think in terms of these real world use cases that require real world scale to solve these real world issues like banking the bankless, they just haven't seen that traction. And so when you look at the HBAR Foundation, Hedera, the Hashgraph Association and Swartz, and you see them all out at, Africa DeFi and Money Summit this week, and you see that not only have we got this announcement with Flutterwave, which is the biggest fintech in Africa, the highest, most valued fintech in Africa, processing, I think, 25 billion in payments so far, but you also have YPay and you also have MTech. You've got three institutions on the ground, very large institutions, YPay, the biggest fintech in the Caribbean, and then the biggest fintech in the whole of Africa, Flutterwave, and then of course alongside institutions like MTech working with the Bank of Ghana, and giving that early sort of flagship CBDC project there with a regional bank so that others can sort of take heed and move on with them. And so at the moment, I don't think there's many, if any, ledgers doing as much as we are on the continent of Africa in terms of working with fintechs of this scale. But we'll see how that plays out, and I'm very excited to see all of the teams that were at Africa DeFi Money Summit really come to market with their products.
And of course, none of this is to bash these other platforms, but there's been other platforms to focus on use cases. We have supply chain, we've had micropayments, we've had Internet of Things, and regions as well. With Cardano in Africa, and Hedera comes by, we'll see it by the side of the road, we'll pick it up, we'll shine it up, and we'll make it our own. And I think we're making our mark not only in these regions, but with these use cases as well. It's just been impressive across the board. And the next thing we had this week was we talked about Fliggs Mobile working with T-Mobile. And of course, T-Mobile is one of the subsidiaries of Deutsche Telekom, one of the Hedera governing council members. But I caught up with Mark. He is the CEO of MoFlix, which works very closely with Fliggs Mobile. But he was telling us about how we can move into this telecom space and the plans that they have to make that happen. So listen to what Mark had to say. Mark, to start off, can you explain how you crossed paths with T-Mobile in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of an enlightenment, I put it that way. So I have two hearts, more or less. One working more than 10 years in telco, and the other one being exposed in Web3 for about, since 2015. So I was talking to many, many telco executives over the years, and they all had quite of a hard time to understand what Web3 might bring to their business. And about a year ago, I got introduced to then Taekion, SVP of T-Mobile Wholesale. And to be frank, I mean, after this call, it finally clicked. And somehow we found a little bit the setup, okay, what might be one of the key elements where telco and Web3 can merge in the future.
All right. So, and speaking of Web3 and mass adoption, how do you see telco providers being able to facilitate that adoption?
Yeah, so there are close to 8 billion SIM cards active in the world. So telco operators have a huge adoption in the market. But on the other side, telco is still a local business. So the majority of all users have a contract in the country where they live. And overall, if you think it that way, I mean, our daily life is absolutely dominated by mobile apps, which is going through this mobile connectivity, but not a single one is coming from an operator. So the operator missed out basically on their market dominance they have. I mean, they're selling a connectivity which is a plain commodity today, and the customer experience is usually quite bad. You get handcuffs in club deals or just complicated products. You have a very high churn, and also their revenues are somehow under pressure. So I think operators did not truly understand that they are just an infrastructure provider, the connectivity, and they truly have to work on that. How can they position themselves providing this key infrastructure also to onboard and activate the masses to this Web3 universe? Because I think they're in a very, very good spot because they have the direct access, but they just have to combine this experience of a very, very easy onboarding, and with eSIM, this becomes more and more easy because you get the whole logistics out of your way. And if you then get just a simple step further and provide them at this point in time with an identity and a wallet, well, you have one magic thing achieved. You have a connectivity, identity, and financial inclusion in one simple experience at a time created where a consumer wants to have a commodity. And this is connectivity. I mean, if you leave your home, the only true reason why you go back and forgot something, it's your phone, it's your connectivity. And we have the vision, we at MoFlix have the vision that if telcos understand that they can provide this gateway access to whatever Web3 will bring, by just creating this connectivity, identity, and financial inclusion experience. At this point in time, they have an endless opportunity that's going to open up for them.
That makes perfect sense. Now, the press release that just came out a couple weeks ago about you and T-Mobile, it mentioned that you're building an application that will provide both Web3 and fintech services. Can you give us a bit of a deeper dive into that app and its planned features?
On the first thing, I have to disappoint the really early adopters of Web3, because whenever you use fairly new technologies in a corporate environment, well, you don't use the latest and fanciest developments around this technology. So the core priority of this app that Fliggs is building, by the way, and we just helped them as Fliggs, is just provide the best mobile subscription experience in the US. Onboarding anytime, anywhere, 24/7, through an app, make calls on the best network in the US in less than 5 minutes after you basically downloaded the app. And we just add the basic access features for whatever this Web3 world will bring. And this is exactly the issuance of a DID, verifiable credentials, and a wallet with a mass-capable key recovery, which is secure and made for the masses. So I think this very, very first scope of the launch is just enabling consumers, enabling the average, ordinary consumer to work with a wallet. And to incentivize this, Fliggs will introduce a classic payback scheme, which is just going into the wallet instead of just reducing the bill. So we want to onboard the average person to this exciting technology. This is the very, very first priority. And we're totally clear that once we have a critical mass on there, that we can include any type of services, be coming from Web 2 to Web 3, bridging also those experiences into this experience, because we secured for them the wallet and their identity and the proof of any type of credentials we might bring to them.
It sounds like this is the right strategy. You obviously have to start someplace. Now, Fliggs will be the first deployment of the MoFlix Web3 stack. Now we know what your short-term plans are, but what are your medium and long-term plans?
Yeah, I mean, telco industry is not really known to adopt new technologies quite fast. So, I mean, with MoFlix, when we started in 2019 and basically created one of the first serverless cloud-only experiences, everybody thought, oh, what are you doing there? Today, it's basically the hit around modern architectures. And I think we pave a similar way with MoFlix with this whole Web3. And again, I mean, this combination of this connectivity, identity, and financial inclusion, which we offer through this Hedera integration, that's just one key element for the operators to grow beyond their current pain on just being a connectivity provider. Because there's a lot of potential to include further services. And we want to bridge this to the relevant experience. As a marketplace, you could also call it a Web3 app store, where the operator comes back in a game they lost a long time ago. If we manage to enable the operators to basically bundle the relevant services for their consumers and not adding handcuffs in complicated bundles, so I think if we achieve that operator apps are used in your daily life, then we are there. But MoFlix is just a key enabler for that. We still need to have bold telco executives that also want to move into this space, add financial services into their offering, add insurances into offering, add any type of marketplace offerings all around that, all around this experience on just, okay, I am the one trusted access into this ecosystem. And let us use this stack to basically get into this new world.
Well, I'm happy it sounds like you found some of those bold executives at T-Mobile to help you out a little bit. Now, finally, when can we expect the app to launch, and how should the Hedera community get involved when it does launch?
We plan to launch in Q1 24. We're still in the fine-tuning of the exact timelines, as there is still a lot to do. I mean, we would love to see the Hedera community talk about the Fliggs launch especially also outside of this Web3 bubble. Because I think it's always very easy and thankful how new Web3 deployments are spread across or within these Web3 communities. We want to go beyond that, because the more people at the end of the day switch their mobile plan to Fliggs, the better start their Fliggs have, and also their better succession rate does at the end of the day more Fliggs have. Because as Fliggs will be the very first launch of this combination of those technologies, there are also quite many eyes on the succession of it. And this is also somehow bound to this MoFlix experience. And I think the more people actually start experiencing what we provide there from an experience level and also from a simplicity how to work in this Web3 world, the better it is. And also for those that are community members that are exposed into the telco industry, we're always happy to get introductions to executives who dare to make their life easier in the future.
Well, Mark, thank you so much for swinging by today and explaining exactly what you're working on. Thank you for choosing Hedera, and good luck.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the invitation to this podcast.
So, Zeb, this is a perfect call to action. Like they said, they're going to be launching probably in Q1 of next year. So all you HBARbarians out there, make sure that you use their application. And that goes for all the applications that come out in the space. Try to get involved. Use these applications. There's going to be some that you're absolutely going to fall in love with. Do you have any thoughts on what came out of Fliggs?
Yeah, I mean, I think as Rob said before, telecoms is sort of a perfect fit use case for the breadth of utility that Hedera provides. And so a massive shout out to the Hashgraph Association there. Not only have they've got T-Mobile, the subsidiary of Deutsche Telekom, the biggest or the strongest 5G provider in the US, they've also got Orange, which is, one of the biggest telecoms providers, I think, on the African continent, or particularly in Morocco. So, you've got a lot of different telecoms companies. We've also got others on the council itself, like Tata. This is great to see that two of them are under the wing of the Hashgraph Association, and I'm sure we'll see a lot come out of the Hedera Enterprise program there. Beyond that, beyond the Hashgraph Association, we've also had some great news from the team at the HBAR Foundation with the Sustainable Impact Fund. We've spoken many a times over the last weeks about regenerative finance, and one of the core principles beyond bringing greater transparency and trust to climate markets is the ability to sort of redirect the financial flows to the people within these economic systems that are the most deserving, or traditionally the ones that are sort of left out in regions like the global south. And so the team, i.e. Hanya and Wes, went out to Senegal last week, and together with Alcott, who's a partner of ours, as we found out recently, alongside Carbon Growth Partners, which is an Australian VC, and Sonaged, which is sort of the national waste company of Senegal, have all come together to build a waste recovery center in Touba, which is one of the main cities in Senegal. So not only will this be sort of tracking the carbon emissions, I believe, of these, these waste removal sort of processes, but it's also going to be redirecting, I think, 15% of all revenues from this project to be reinvested in the communities in the surrounding area. So again, not only is the Hedera Guardian getting action there, but we're also making sure that some of that capital goes back to the communities that are on the ground, sort of enabling these processes to happen, who without, it's impossible to make the changes that need to happen. So it's really exciting to see ReFi in its truest form again there, and seeing the sort of investment principles of the SIF coming together in full swing.
Yeah, what the HBAR Foundation is doing with the Sustainable Impact Fund, and of course, shout out to Wes taking the lead there, is just amazing. But not only that, we have another team that's getting support from the HBAR Foundation, and that's Taekion. So Dave was out there at Hello Future Live. We had some great conversations. I've been having conversations with him for a long time because he is an OG in the Hedera space. But they are building some really important infrastructure in the space, and I caught up with him, and he had some fantastic insights. So listen in. Dave, it was a pleasure to meet you at Hello Future Live, but you have some important infrastructure that you're building that has caught the eye of the HBAR Foundation. Can you explain what Taekion is and what's your vision for it?
Yeah, thanks, Brandon. Yeah, so Taekion was launched to build a platform for trusted data in the era of decentralized systems and artificial intelligence. My background is I have a master's degree in engineering, and I specialize in artificial intelligence, so I built one of the world's first intelligent agent-based software platforms to manage things like smart cities and smart grids, and had a pretty successful career in that area. And then when I launched Taekion, I was very concerned about the data, how to protect data in the era of Web3 and AI. And so we decided to build a network. Essentially, the network is designed to provide a service that keeps data safe, tamper-resistant, verifiable, and trusted over the system's life cycle. So our vision is to become the secure Dropbox, if you will, for critical data, and eventually a safe network for any data, including digital assets and the entire evolving metaverse. So we were seed funded by some pretty prestigious organizations, went through a lot of due diligence to get our funding, but that including Department of Defense, U.S. Air Force, Department of Energy, and more recently the National Science Foundation and their distributed consensus group. So that's sort of the vision. Now the problem that we're solving really is there's two different aspects. There's the large enterprise mission critical, and then there's the stuff within Web3, and it's for us it's all critical. But the issue is that a cost of a data breach for a large organization can be $9 million per data breach, is up to $400 million. For a small business or someone who's launching a small business, a data breach, the cost isn't the issue. You can actually go out of business. So within critical infrastructure, data integrity, the risk for in mission and critical, life critical things, as you can imagine, electric grids, autonomous vehicles, AI, machine learning, data poisoning, it's a real issue. So the current approach is, in terms of just cloud storage and the distributed systems like file chain, are subject to data breaches. You can't get complete file immutability. You can't have availability guarantees, and you don't really get end-to-end encryption unless it's very difficult to do that. So we've sort of solved all of those issues, and the Taekion network again was built to protect critical data using blockchain DLT technology natively. We integrate with Hedera, of course. We protect the entire data set on chain. What does that mean? Well, it means we put all the data and all the metadata on an actual blockchain, and then we use Hedera for consensus. So we're providing tamper resistance, immutability, and built-in backup and recovery, all the things that you can do with any other data storage platform. So in the future, all of this is patented. We have the enterprise version ready on Amazon Web Services and Google Cloud. You can download open source chain code. It's built on Hyperledger Sawtooth. It's got dynamic consensus. You can also download and integrate Hedera consensus now with Sawtooth because we built that. And then we have future optimizations. We can protect the entire end-to-end lifecycle of data because we have a very sophisticated patent called rotating packet services. I won't get into, but essentially it protects the data at wire speed from the time it's collected to the time it's actually moving around the internet. So again, markets, enterprise, critical infrastructure, defense, telecom, fintech, autonomous systems, and then, of course, crypto and Web3. So our current beta that we're working on now, that's available as we speak at beta.taekion.com, and at the end, of anyone that wants to become part of our beta can certainly join. It's very easy. Google Chrome browser, all you have to do is just drag and drop and connect your Hashpack wallet, and you can, in very, very short order, you've got your data protected permanently and very securely.
So, Dave, that was really well covered, but can you do a little bit deeper dive into some of the features you offer for Hedera builders and why it's useful?
Sure. So for Web3, it's very simple. Of course, we're launching our own Taekion public chain in 2024 with a token mint, but the tools that are available to anybody that wants to integrate are an API that's under development that someone like Hashpack or Citadel or any of these wallet providers or the DeFi community or anybody that has an NFT marketplace can simply call our API, and if their customers are buying NFTs or want to store their personal data or whatever, they can do it through a simple API. So it's a very simple interface. The other tools that are available are, of course, we have browser extensions and we have web interfaces, and we're open sourcing most of that. So if someone wants to integrate that into their own application, they can certainly call us and work with us on those things. If you are a very large enterprise, of course, we have our entire chain is open source. It's Hyperledger chain code. It's a long-term support version that we've worked on for 3 years. The Hedera consensus service integration is an open source stack that can be downloaded and can be used to integrate with some of the Hyperledger projects that weren't supported initially. And that whole chain code and all of that stuff can be downloaded on Amazon Web Services as we speak.
Fantastic. So one more question. Why did you choose to focus on the Hedera ecosystem?
Good. Well, so I was looking, when I built Taekion, I was looking for literally, I wasn't looking to get into crypto to buy tokens. I was looking to get into crypto to use it as an infrastructure to build my platform on, because we are working with some pretty sophisticated entities. And so I looked at them all. I looked at Ethereum. I looked at, of course, you don't look at Bitcoin because it's too expensive. But I looked at IOTA. In fact, I was an advisor to IOTA. And then I met Manson Lehman in 2017, and the light just went off and said, "Oh my God, this is it." And so we waited, and we were very patient about when we were going to do our integration. But there's that aspect, and then I've been very involved in the Hedera community, a little bit in the background, but I've been really helping to fight FUD and really kind of help the community along. And I was on the circuit speaking a lot about Hedera in 2017, 2018 timeframe. So I knew in my heart that as soon as I talked to Lehman and Mance, I was like, okay, these guys have figured it out. There's nothing better on the market. And so I chose Hedera, and then we had to figure out how we're going to use the distributed consensus, because when we were working with the National Science Foundation, we developed actually our own asynchronous Byzantine fault-tolerant consensus mechanism. Not many people know this, but we evaluated all of the different ones that were available, including Microsoft and Honey Badger and all the ones that are out there, and realized that, wow, it would just take a lot of time and energy and capital to build our own. And I said, okay, there's the magic. We can just integrate with Hedera. You have a cryptographic hash now on the public Hedera network, which is global, and then you've got your data protected on our network, and so you've got multiple levels of redundancy, and so that's why we chose it. And I love the Hedera community. I love the HBARbarians, and we decided with our light version that we've launched in this beta that we want to just really support people who want to store digital assets or anything related to digital assets or the metaverse, and really just focus on the Hedera community. And then once we're successful within the Hedera community, then we may branch out to other chains.
It's so good to hear the path into an ecosystem like that, and your story is certainly a good one. So I know you mentioned this real quick in the middle, but where can developers find you if they're interested in using your services?
Sure. I mean, they can find me on at Taekion tweet on Twitter and ask questions there, or send me a personal message, info@taekion.com as an email, or just go to taekion.com. Also, if you're interested in the beta, you can believe you can send an email to beta@taekion.com.
Well, Dave, it was great hearing your path into the space. Thank you so much for coming on today, and good luck.
Thank you, Brandon. It was great being on your show.
So, of course, like I mentioned, there's some really important infrastructure being built that just continues across our entire space, and Taekion's just continuing with that trend. All right, so one thing I do want to highlight for next week, there is going to be an interview done by David Berlin. He is the editor-in-chief of the Blockchain Journal. He is going to be talking to Duncan from Aberdeen, and we're going to get some really good information on the general tokenization that's going on in our space. So that's going to be on October 19th. That's next Thursday at 11 p.m. Pacific. So that would be 2 p.m. Eastern. And I also want to congratulate Acoer and Jim Nasser for being one of the founding members of the Cancer Platform. Jim said, "We're delighted to be a founding partner of the Cancer Platform. Our recent work with neoblastoma has given us an even greater appreciation of the need for trusted information to help support patients suffering with cancer. And we firmly believe the Cancer Platform is uniquely positioned to become the trusted, independent platform for cancer patients." Now, what we've seen Acoer do with Health Ready and getting featured by Coinbase, it's just good to see them staying involved, not just in the healthcare space, but Jim is always one of the best HBAR out there, and he gave a great speech at Hello Future Live as well. So again, congratulations for being one of those founding members of the Cancer platform. All right, and we're going to take a hard left turn here. Obviously, we're going to get into Karate Combat real quick because Ben Armstrong, formerly known as Bitboy, is going to be fighting with Karate Combat. Now, it's not going to be on the main card. I think there's been a lot of contention around this because he's a contentious figure, but it's not going to be on the main card. I think it's going to be in December, not the next one. I think the next one is on November 4th. Then there's going to be another fight in December 15th. There's going to be a full main card of 10 fights of professional fighters. And then I think they're going to have, 6 fights for influencers. And he's going to be part of that second card that's going to be going on. I think we have to remember that Karate Combat isn't, a children's hospital. It's not a school. It's not a church. It is a fight league. It's a strike league. We don't have to put too much pressure on them. They are trying to entertain people and get people into their platform. We heard Dave talk last week of how difficult it is to get super fans out there, and they are experimenting with Hedera, of course, and this up-only gaming, consumer engagement. And this is a good way to get people to pay attention and get people engaged. Not necessarily just to come and watch that fight, but that's certainly why they're doing it. They want people to come in and watch whoever Ben is going to be fighting. But that's going to allow them to come and see their fantastic product, right? All of these other great fights that they put on and then interact with their application. So I think this is all around a good thing for the Hedera ecosystem. We're not talking about Ben becoming the president of Hedera or the CFO even of Karate Combat. He's just going to be getting in the pit and blowing off some steam. So I don't see any problems with this. Zep, do you have any thoughts about this?
Yeah, so I think AJ is also going to be fighting alongside him, who was the former writer of Bitboy itself, who I think now has gone on to his own sort of solo endeavor. But he's also, I really like AJ, so I think he'll be there as well. So there should be, a lot of different influencers fighting, which of course, people have different opinions on different influencers, but there's no doubt about it. They bring in viewership, so excited for that.
Yeah, it should be entertaining. All of their fights are entertaining. And of course, it gets the thought process in the back of my head being a competitor. Hey, could I get in the pit? Who knows? I'm just kidding. But
you versus Bitboy.
Yeah. Hopefully I can make it to more of those events. And it is fun to watch and it is engaging. All right, so with that, let's get into some network analysis. So over the past 24 hours, we've had over 150 million transactions, a new record with an average between 17 and 1800 TPS and a max TPS of over 3000. We had been cruising along at about 1500 TPS until Tuesday when we jumped to around 1800 TPS. And with this pace, as I mentioned before, we should be doing over 1 billion transactions per week. And if we keep this pace, we should be crossing that milestone within the next few hours. And all that speed while maintaining 3.8 seconds to consensus finality. Taking a look at Dragonglass, we've created nearly 40,000 accounts this week, so that's good as well. And moving down to our fungible tokens, Bitcarbon, the diamond standard fungible tokens backed by real diamonds, is in the top spot. We should have Sammy from Blade Wallet on next week to discuss what they're doing with diamond standard. That's followed by the meme coin Zero, Wrapped HBAR, Energy Trade Token, Sauce, Not a Protocol, and Dovu. Finally, we have Karate Combat, Heliswap, and Jam to round out that top 10. And moving down to our NFTs, we have Road Code Access in the top spot with a really impressive 55,000 transactions this week. There are a few Karate Combat themed NFTs in the top 10. Crazy Pixel Club, which is a new one, is in the third spot, followed by Earthling Sidekick Animals, Bitcarbon NFT, ADSC Fangs, Hangry, and the Hashgraph naming service to finish off the top 10. And I also want to call attention to Dragonglass. They have a new feature where you can search NFTs, so check that out. And with that, we'll go ahead and get into some DeFi. Taking a look at DeFi Llama, not including state or liquid staking, the total value locked in the Hedera DeFi ecosystem is just about $29 million. The drop reflecting the drop in token prices. SaucerSwap makes up $25 million of that, and HelloSwap $3.5 million. The farming rewards on some of Saucer Swap's popular trading pairs stands at 6% on HBAR HBAR-X, 24% on HBAR Sauce, 25% on HBAR USDC, and 23% on HBAR Karate. Over on HeliSwap, HBAR HBAR-X is at 4%, 82% on HBAR Heli, 19% on HBAR USDC, and 39% on HBAR Karate. One thing I noticed on the Karate pair is there's only $12,500 in liquidity. I don't participate in providing liquidity on my Karate, but if I did, I'd have a pretty big impact on HeliSwap. Taking a look at the crypto and HBAR markets, risk assets took a hit this week, particularly when inflation didn't drop midweek when the latest CPI data dropped. Bitcoin is up slightly on the day, but down over 4% on the week. HBAR had been underperforming this week, but caught a slight bid today, up 2.5%, allowing it to be down about the same as Bitcoin on the week. At the time of recording, HBAR is at about 4.6 cents, just above a support range between 4.5 and 4.6 cents. If we head north, I'm looking to 5 cents for resistance. I brought up one point to a troll on X that in bear markets, which we're still in, good news doesn't impact the market, but builds a base for the next bull. This is far from exclusive to the crypto markets. It happens all the time in stocks, but has been pronounced in both HBAR and the broader crypto markets in recent months. There has been some reaction to news, but it hasn't held. Just know this is normal, and in the long run, the news will have an impact. All right, Zep, that's pretty much all we have. Is there anything else you'd like to pass on?
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway for me this week was, again, that banking the bankless narrative. In order to bank an entire continent, you have to be able to scale. And as Rob mentioned, this Flutter Wave use case in particular is really, really testing out this theory of banking the bankless at scale. They're the biggest fintech on the continent, integrating USDC. I believe, as Rob said, maybe in the future there'll be sort of stablecoin studio integration, which plays into our thesis we mentioned a couple of weeks ago about capturing that emerging market liquidity within stablecoins and so on. But alongside that, we're working with the banks. Working with Bank of Ghana on their eSteady hackathon, and we're also working with YPay, who's connecting the entire region of the Caribbean, the islands in the Caribbean, as well as the Americas and African continent itself. So we've got 3 massive projects out there, all massive in their own rights, all with their own massive network capabilities in their own right, or networking rather. So I'm really sure that these will be the sort of the flagship use cases that we can take to more fintechs, to more banks in these emerging regions. Even when you look at sort of the Orange, fintech accelerator they've got going on in Morocco, it's these kind of use cases we can go to them with, show that we've been tested at scale, and really, really open the floodgates to more and more fintechs adopting stablecoins, and those stablecoins being on Hedera. So I think an exciting moment for USDC on Hedera, definitely, but also the stablecoin studio and other non-USD stablecoins as they emerge in our ecosystem.
Well covered, Zep. As always, drop your questions down there for Rob in the comments. Next Tuesday at 3 p.m. Eastern, we're going to have a governing council use case Twitter space. Shane from the HBAR Foundation, the CEO of the HBAR Foundation, is going to be there. We're going to have Wes. We're going to have other guests on there as well, so it should be one that you don't want to miss. I'm going to have a couple interviews. I have one with Red Swan. Of course, they're tokenizing real estate on Hedera. And as I mentioned, we're going to get Blade to talk about their collaboration with Diamond Standard. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week.